I slid into Noah's car, the leather cool against my skin, a stark contrast to the simmering rage building inside me. The familiar scent of his cologne, usually a comforting anchor, now felt like a suffocating shroud. My eyes fell upon a small, unassuming tube nestled in the glove compartment. Personal lubricant. The sight of it sent a fresh wave of nausea washing over me. A wave that wasn't just about infidelity, but about the calculated deception, the deliberate choice to hide this secret life from me, his wife of 40 years. Without a word, without even a flicker of hesitation, I reached for it, my fingers trembling slightly, not from fear, but from a potent mix of anger, betrayal, and a fierce, primal need for justice. I swapped it, not with something innocuous, but with something far more potent, a tube of industrial-strength superglue, its metallic gleam mocking the saccharine sweetness of the lubricant. The consequences? Let's just say our tranquil suburban streets suddenly became a scene from a disaster movie, complete with sirens, flashing lights, and a very bewildered fire department crew. But that's a story for another time. This is the story of how it all began, of the unraveling, the slow, agonizing revelation of a truth that had been hidden in plain sight for far too long. The kitchen table felt cold under my hands, the silence so profound it pressed upon me, a suffocating blanket woven from years of unspoken anxieties and simmering suspicions. The old clock, a relic from my mother's wedding, ticked with a relentless rhythm, each tick a tiny hammer blow against the fragile facade of our seemingly perfect life. It was a beautiful life, meticulously crafted, or so I had thought. Now, staring at that ticking clock, I saw it for what it truly was, a carefully constructed prison, its bars made of lies and deceit. Noah walked in, the door closing softly behind him. He didn't look merely tired, he looked shattered, haunted. His usual confident swagger was replaced by a slumped posture, his shoulders burdened with something far heavier than a briefcase full of business deals. There was a haunted look in his eyes, a flicker of something akin to fear that sent a shiver down my spine. He tossed his jacket onto the sofa with a weary sigh, the gesture somehow lacking its usual practiced ease. He fumbled with his tie, struggling to loosen it as though it were a noose tightening around his neck, then collapsed onto the bed with a groan. He didn't even bother to shower, the faint, expensive scent of his cologne was overpowered by something else entirely, something alien and cloying, a sweet, floral perfume, brazen and unapologetic, a fragrant fingerprint from a life hidden from me. The perfume clung to him like a second skin, a silent testament to his deception. The hum of his snoring filled the room a few minutes later, a sound that once comforted me, a sound that now felt like a cruel mockery, a lullaby for a fool who had blindly trusted him for 40 years. I rose from the kitchen table, moving with a practiced grace born from years of managing a household, a marriage, and a life that I was only just beginning to realize was a carefully constructed illusion. I began tidying his mess. There was his jacket, rumpled and discarded, his wallet, bulging with credit cards and receipts, his phone, its screen illuminated with a new email, a sinister omen glowing in the dim light. Noah never used email. He always said, "Juliet, all this tech stuff is too complicated. I'd rather just make a call." But here it was, an email, a digital ghost from another life, an unseen presence in the house I shared with him. Driven by a morbid curiosity, a desperate need to find answers, I opened the email. Only a few words, a few devastating words, a simple sentence followed by a childish heart emoji, a symbol of affection meant for someone else. It was a virtual stab in my heart, a sudden cold shock. "You were incredible tonight, Dad." Who was calling him Dad? And with such intimacy? The word hung in the air, heavy and accusatory. My hands trembled as I instinctively swiped down, seeking additional evidence. But there was nothing else, just an unfamiliar email address, a string of characters, a digital enigma offering no answers, only a deeper chasm of uncertainty. A cold dread settled in my bones, a chilling realization that my life wasn't what I thought it was. It was like discovering a hidden passage, a secret room in a house I thought I knew intimately. I glanced at the bedroom, where Noah slept soundly, his face serene and peaceful, a stark contrast to the turmoil raging within me. His peaceful slumber seemed to mock my inner chaos. My heart pounded, a frantic drumbeat of betrayal and fear. I quickly closed the email, my trembling hands nearly dropping the phone. I resumed cleaning, my movements mechanical, my mind racing. As I gathered his discarded clothes, preparing to take them to the laundry room, my fingers brushed against something crisp and folded in his pants pocket. It was a receipt, fresh and new, from a high-end steakhouse in San Antonio, dated that very night. San Antonio? He had told me he was meeting business partners in Dallas. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Noah loathed the drive to Dallas, always complaining about the traffic. San Antonio, however, held a different significance. It was where his mother had lived before she passed away. He'd often spoken fondly of those memories, of time spent with her in that city. But who was he dining with in San Antonio while lying to me about his location? The receipt detailed a dinner for two, a bottle of expensive Cabernet Sauvignon, the same wine he'd given me for our 10th anniversary, a wine I'd treasured, a symbol of our love, alongside filet mignon and pasta. My thoughts raced back to the last time he took me to a place like that, 10 years ago, when I opened my first bakery. The memory was vivid, the flickering candlelight, his proud smile, his toast to my success. Now, that memory, like so many others, was tainted, a faded photograph in an album of lies. My hands shaking, I silently captured images of both the receipt and the email, a digital trail of breadcrumbs leading me down a path of painful discovery. A wife's intuition, sharpened by 40 years of shared life, whispered of a truth I was desperately trying to avoid. Something was profoundly wrong, and I had to uncover the truth. I was standing at the precipice of a cliff, poised to witness the shattering of my world. The garage felt cold and desolate. Noah's SUV still radiated heat from its recent journey, the air thick with the scent of gasoline and that persistent, invasive perfume. The flashlight beam cut through the darkness, a cold dread gripping my stomach as I began to methodically search, every corner of the vehicle a potential repository of evidence that would confirm my worst fears. The car sat inert in the garage, bathed in the weak, flickering light of a single bulb hanging precariously from the ceiling. Dust motes danced in the beam, illuminating the worn leather of the driver's seat. It looked ordinary enough, a few coins scattered across the console like fallen stars, an empty plastic water bottle with a slightly sticky residue clinging to its base. But nothing could have prepared me for what I found nestled in the passenger side glove compartment. My fingers, probing the dark recess, encountered something smooth and plastic, slightly yielding to the pressure. I pulled it out, the object cool against my skin, and my breath hitched in my throat. It was a small, almost insignificant tube, but the sight of it, a used tube of personal lubricant, its cap smeared with dried, telltale residue, sent a jolt of icy fear through me. The sticky substance, evidence of an intimacy I hadn't shared with Noah in years, felt like a physical blow. This wasn't just a thing, it was a symbol. A tangible representation of a betrayal so profound, it threatened to shatter the foundations of our life together. The silence of the garage pressed in on me, amplifying the deafening silence of our bedroom, a silence Noah had always attributed to fatigue, to the inevitable waning of passion with age. The years, he'd often sigh, his voice laced with a weary resignation that had always felt convenient. But this lubricant? This blatant, undeniable evidence? It painted a drastically different picture. It screamed of a hidden life, a secret world I knew nothing about. The question, sharp and agonizing, sliced through me. What was this for? Each syllable was a hammer blow to my carefully constructed reality, each repetition a deeper plunge into the icy waters of doubt. Paralyzed, yet oddly propelled by a primal survival instinct, I carefully replaced the tube exactly where I had found it, my movements slow and deliberate. My hands, slick with a mixture of the garage's dust and a sudden, cold sweat, felt contaminated. I frantically wiped them clean with a napkin, scrubbing until my skin was raw, as if I could somehow erase the invisible stain of his infidelity. The act felt futile, like trying to scrub away a permanent marker from a whiteboard. The betrayal, I realized with a sickening lurch in my stomach, had seeped deeper than skin deep. It had infiltrated my very being. My search continued, now imbued with a chilling methodical precision. Underneath the back seat, nestled amongst forgotten receipts and discarded candy wrappers, I unearthed a small pile of crumpled napkins. The faint, sweet scent that wafted up from them was undeniably feminine, but distinctly foreign. It wasn't my own subtle rose fragrance, nor anything I'd ever encountered before. It was a bold, unfamiliar perfume, an assertive, defiant floral that shouted its presence in the hushed confines of our garage, a blatant declaration of a clandestine affair. This wasn't a whisper, it was a roar. Instinctively, I documented everything. The lubricant, the napkins, I photographed each piece of evidence with a trembling hand, as if capturing the image would somehow also trap the scent, preserve the tangible proof of his deception. I felt like a forensic photographer in a crime scene, except the crime had been committed against my heart. The photographs felt cold, impersonal, yet they were the only weapon I had against the slowly encroaching tide of despair. I carefully closed the car door, the weight of the evidence pressing down on me, a physical manifestation of the emotional burden I carried. It felt heavier than any sack of flour I'd ever lifted from the bakery. Back inside, the kitchen felt sterile, alien. I sat at the table, my hands shaking uncontrollably, my mind racing. I picked up Noah's phone again, a familiar object now imbued with a sinister significance. I sifted through his messages, expecting to find incriminating evidence, but all I found were mundane work chats, the sterile, professional exchanges of a businessman, cold and impersonal as a desert landscape. His inbox was a stark wasteland, empty save for that one strange email, the one I'd already seen. I checked his sent items, drafts, everything. Nothing. The digital cleanliness was unsettling, too perfect, too meticulously erased. He was a master of deception, I thought bitterly, a puppeteer pulling the strings of his lies with practiced ease. The rage that coursed through me wasn't the fiery explosion of anger I'd anticipated. It was a cold, hard stone settling in my chest, a chilling weight that threatened to crush me. But something else stirred alongside the rage, a fierce, almost desperate need for the truth, a burning desire to expose the lie, no matter the cost. It was a dangerous emotion, but it was also the only thing that kept me going. The next morning arrived with the pale light of dawn, filtering through the gauzy curtains. Sleep had eluded me, the images swirling in my mind like a venomous carousel, the lubricant, the restaurant receipt, the email, each a piece of the puzzle that painted a portrait of betrayal. I moved through the kitchen in a daze, preparing breakfast, 2 fried eggs, toast, and Noah's beloved strong black coffee. He came downstairs looking tired, his hair rumpled, his eyes still heavy with sleep. He sat, took a sip of coffee, then set the cup down, half full. "Important meeting," he mumbled, the words a rehearsed line, delivered without meeting my gaze. "Home late." The ease of it, the practiced casualness, sent a fresh wave of icy dread through me. He was so good at this, I thought, so effortlessly adept at weaving his web of lies. I managed a strained smile, a mask to hide the turmoil within. The question, "Where is this meeting?" choked in my throat. With whom? In San Antonio again? But the words remained unspoken, my rage a simmering fire beneath a calm exterior. "All right," I said, my voice flat. "Be careful." He gave me a perfunctory pat on the shoulder, a gesture more of obligation than affection, and left. The door clicked shut, leaving me alone with the monstrous certainty that had taken root in my heart. The rhythmic clatter of dishes, a small, familiar anchor in the churning sea of my emotions, provided a fragile sense of control. I couldn't just sit and invent theories. I needed proof, hard evidence. I reached for my phone and found the number for Mrs. Miller, a friend from my early days at the bakery. She'd been a lifeline then, and I hoped she would be now. She'd once mentioned a private investigator specializing in infidelity cases, a man named Thomas. "Juliet," she'd said, "if you ever need it, I can give you Thomas's number. He's very discreet and reliable." I never thought I'd need to call him, but now the thought felt like a lifeline thrown into a storm-tossed sea. My voice trembled as I dialed, each ring a drumbeat of anxiety. "Hello, Mrs. Miller, can you help me get in touch with Thomas? I need him." A silence hung in the air, heavy with unspoken understanding, before she finally spoke. "Juliet, what's going on? Did Noah do something?" I sighed, reluctant to recount the details, my pride bruised and raw. "I just need to know the truth," I whispered, my voice barely audible. Can you help me? Mrs. Miller, a woman of few words and profound intuition, agreed without hesitation. Within the hour, a message arrived from Thomas. Mrs. Roberts, please don't worry. I will help you. The message was brief, yet it provided a sliver of hope, a lifeline in a sea of deceit. At noon, I sat in a secluded corner of a small, downtown cafe, its aroma of roasted coffee oddly unsettling. Thomas arrived, a short, stocky man with kind, perceptive eyes, and the weight of my suspicions, the heavy burden of uncertainty, seemed to ease slightly under the weight of his professional demeanor. His calm presence offered a sense of stability, a beacon of hope in the storm. The interview, I knew, was just the beginning. I placed the flash drive on the small, worn table of the cafe, the cheap laminate cool beneath my trembling fingertips. It contained the evidence, blurry photos from the night before, a cryptic email, a restaurant receipt from a place I'd never heard of, a discarded lubricant tube, the very sight of which made my stomach churn, and a few crumpled napkins, stained with what I suspected was lipstick. This wasn't just suspicion, this was a creeping dread, a cold, clammy hand squeezing the life out of my heart. 40 years. 40 years of marriage, a lifetime built on what I'd believed was a rock-solid foundation of trust, was now crumbling into dust. How could I, Eleanor Roberts, a woman who prided herself on her strength and resilience, be reduced to this, sitting across from a private investigator, a stranger named Thomas, clutching a flash drive like a lifeline? This is all I have, I whispered, my voice cracking, the words tasting like ash and bitter regret. I think my husband, Noah, is cheating on me. Thomas, a man whose face was a carefully constructed mask of professional impassivity, nodded slowly, his eyes, however, betraying a flicker of something, compassion? Perhaps understanding? He picked up his phone, his fingers deftly scrolling through the images. The cafe buzzed around us, a cacophony of clinking mugs and hushed conversations, a stark contrast to the silent turmoil raging within me. Each photo was a small, agonizing blow. The email, with its vague yet suggestive language, felt like a cruel taunt. The receipt, a testament to a clandestine rendezvous. The lubricant tube, the very thought of it brought a wave of nausea, a physical manifestation of the betrayal I suspected. He made meticulous notes in a small, leather-bound notebook, his pen scratching across the paper like a knife. Mrs. Roberts, he finally said, his voice low and reassuring, I understand. I'll begin surveillance of Mr. Roberts this afternoon. I'll contact you as soon as I have anything concrete. Please, don't do anything to arouse suspicion. His words were a balm to my raw, bleeding heart. Yet, even his reassurance couldn't fully quell the rising tide of despair. The tears, which had been threatening to spill over for the past hour, finally escaped, hot and unwelcome, tracing a path down my cheeks. Thank you, I managed to croak, my voice barely above a whisper. I just need to know the truth. Whatever it may be. He offered a small, compassionate smile, a genuine expression that momentarily pierced through his professional demeanor. I'll do my best, Mrs. Roberts. Now go home, and try to act as if nothing is amiss. Leaving the cafe, I walked blindly into the throng of people, a ghost amongst the living. The city noise, usually a comforting hum, now felt like a mocking chorus to my inner turmoil. 40 years. A lifetime spent believing in the man I'd married, the man I'd built a life with, the man who had been my rock, my anchor, my Noah. The irony was a cruel joke, a punchline to a tragedy I never wanted to be a part of. The image of Noah, my Noah, strong, dependable, the epitome of a devoted husband and father, was being systematically dismantled, replaced by a stranger, a shadow of the man I thought I knew. I felt adrift, lost in a sea of uncertainty and grief, a lone ship caught in a storm. That night, the familiar aroma of yeast and flour in my bakery couldn't soothe the turmoil in my soul. My bakery, our bakery, another testament to our shared life, now felt tainted, overshadowed by the looming darkness of suspicion. As I reviewed delivery invoices, a familiar routine, my phone buzzed, a sharp, jarring sound in the quiet of the late night. A message from Thomas. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat echoing in my ears. I opened it, my breath catching in my throat. The photo appeared on the screen, slowly focusing into a stark, agonizing clarity. It was Noah, wearing his favorite light blue shirt, the one I loved to see him in. But he wasn't alone. He was holding hands with a woman. A woman I recognized with a sickening realization. It was Allison, my daughter-in-law. Allison, radiant in a tight black dress, her usually demure face painted with heavy makeup, her hair cascading down her shoulders, a striking contrast to her usual understated style. They were not simply walking side by side, they were entwined, their bodies turned towards each other, whispering secrets into the night air. They didn't look like a father-in-law and daughter-in-law. They looked like lovers. The image ripped through me, a physical wound. More photos arrived. One showed them seated in a secluded corner of a lavish restaurant, candles flickering on the table, creating a romantic ambience. Allison leaned in close, a smile playing on her lips, and Noah toasted her glass with a tenderness I had never witnessed in 40 years of marriage. That look, the adoration, the genuine affection, the warmth in his eyes, was a look he had reserved for me, for the young woman from San Diego, the girl he had fallen in love with. Now, it was directed at my daughter-in-law. The pain was a physical force, a crushing weight on my chest. Then came the video. 2 a.m. My hands trembled so violently that I nearly dropped my phone. I pressed play, the sound muffled by my headphones, a desperate attempt to contain the explosion of emotions threatening to erupt. The video showed Allison whispering in Noah's ear, her voice sweet and conspiratorial, the soft light of the restaurant glinting in her eyes. Her voice, as captured by the video, was a siren's call, drawing Noah into her orbit. Noah laughed, a sound so unfamiliar to me now, a sound that resonated with a hollowness that pierced my heart. The way he opened the car door for her, the tenderness, the gallantry, it was a display of affection usually reserved for a beloved lover, not for a daughter-in-law. I replayed it over and over, a self-inflicted torture, each viewing another wound in my already broken heart. Allison, whom I had treated like my own daughter, whom I had taught to bake our family's traditional flan, was betraying me. Noah, the man I had given my entire life to, the man with whom I had built a family, was betraying me, and our son, Daniel. The questions were a tidal wave, threatening to pull me under, to drown me in a sea of despair. Mechanically, my hands saved the photos and video, noting every detail, every date, every time, every location, even the restaurant's name. My hands moved on autopilot, but my mind was a tempest, a maelstrom of disbelief and heartache. I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't believe that Noah and Allison were capable of such cruelty, such a blatant disregard for everything we'd shared. Yet, the evidence was undeniable, a mountain of irrefutable proof. I was surrounded by the sweet aroma of pastries, the comforting smell that usually soothed me, but today, it was hollow, a stark reminder of the shattered foundation of my life. The next morning, amidst the scent of flour and vanilla, which usually brought me peace, I felt an emptiness that echoed the hollowness in my heart. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket. It was Thomas. A short, chilling message, Mrs. Roberts, I'm sending you more evidence. My hands shook as I opened the message, the next series of photos appearing on the screen, each a new shard of glass piercing my soul. The first photo showed Noah. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the plaza as I watched them. Noah, in his usual, almost faded gray shirt, emerged from the imposing law office, a building that seemed to hum with the quiet ambition of its occupants. Beside him, Allison, a vision in a beige dress that clung subtly to her form, her dark hair pulled back in a severe ponytail, her face almost completely obscured by oversized sunglasses. The sunglasses, I thought bitterly, a pathetic, almost comical attempt at concealing their clandestine rendezvous. They weren't walking like in-laws, politely distanced and exchanging pleasantries. No. This was different. This was a closeness, a physical intimacy that spoke volumes, a silent, desperate language only lovers understand. Their bodies were practically intertwined, a blatant testament to their forbidden bond, a betrayal etched into the very air around them. The next image on the flash drive, a digital snapshot frozen in time, showed them standing before a gleaming, four-star hotel. The glass doors reflected the vibrant hues of the setting sun, shimmering like a mirage. A gold-leafed sign, ostentatiously proclaiming its luxury, hung above the entrance. I zoomed in, the digital image expanding pixel by pixel on my screen, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. My eyes scanned desperately, searching, pleading for some innocuous explanation, some detail that would shatter the cruel reality unfolding before me. But there was nothing. No fleeting glance, no nervous fidgeting, no awkward hesitation. Just comfort. An unnerving, almost sickening sense of ease and belonging between them, a world of shared secrets and stolen moments that excluded me utterly, leaving me on the outside, looking in through a pane of cold, unforgiving glass. Then came the video, a short clip sent by Mr. Thomas, my private investigator, a man whose services felt both necessary and profoundly degrading. My fingers trembled as I pressed play, the silent anticipation of physical weight in my chest. The footage was grainy, taken from a distance, but clear enough to see Noah and Allison on the hotel's third-floor balcony, bathed in the golden light of the fading day. His arm was casually, possessively around her waist, drawing her close, her head rested on his shoulder, her dark hair swaying gently in the warm breeze. It was a picture of domesticity, a scene of serene intimacy that pierced me like a shard of ice. And then, the kiss. Quick, fleeting, a stolen moment of passion that erased years of carefully constructed lies. It wasn't a passionate, lingering kiss, it was a kiss that spoke of years of suppressed desire, of clandestine meetings and whispered promises. A kiss that shattered the fragile foundation of my life. I replayed the video countless times, each frame an agonizing blow, a slow, meticulous dissection of my own heartbreak. Frame by frame, I watched as Allison emerged from the hotel room, her face radiant, her joy palpable, her laughter echoing silently in the digital space. She ran towards Noah, her arms outstretched in a hug that spoke of a love as vibrant and untamed as the sunset painting the sky. She looked like a girl, giddy with the thrill of first love, not a woman twice my daughter's age and married to my son. I slumped back into the chair, the cold, hard edge digging into my flesh, anchoring me to the unforgiving reality. I gripped the table, the wood cool and smooth beneath my trembling fingers, a futile attempt to stop myself from completely unraveling. Mr. Thomas's message appeared again on the screen. They also rented the room for the afternoon, it read. It looks like they're staying the night. I'll keep an eye on them. Each word felt like a hammer blow. Just hours earlier, Noah had sent me a text message, the epitome of casual deceit. Juliet, I won't be home tonight. I have to meet a potential partner from out of town. Get some rest. Sweet, concerned, caring, the same practice tone he'd used for over 30 years. The irony was a bitter pill. A potential partner. He wasn't out of town. He was here, in this luxury hotel, with our daughter-in-law, his arms around her, her head on his shoulder. I opened my portable hard drive, the cool metal a stark contrast to the burning fire within me. With trembling fingers, I meticulously saved each photo, each frame of the video, each piece of damning evidence. With each click of the save button, I studied the image, half expecting to wake up from this horrible nightmare, hoping it was all some cruel hallucination. In each frame, Noah's gaze toward Allison was a tender expression I hadn't seen in years. The way he touched her hair. That gentle caress was hauntingly familiar, it echoed the way he used to touch my hair, over 3 decades ago, under the starry San Diego sky, when our love, our naive youthful love, seemed invincible, eternal. Now, looking at the evidence of their betrayal, I only saw years of carefully cultivated lies, of deliberate deception, of a heart broken not once, but countless times over. The memory of family gatherings, of carefully constructed dinner table scenes, Allison perpetually distant from Noah, her apparent disdain palpable even to our son, flooded back. Daniel's jokes, Mom, I think Allison can't stand Dad. She avoids him like the plague, now felt like a cruel joke, a symphony of lies orchestrated by the 2 people I trusted most. The phone vibrated, shattering the silent contemplation. It was the detective. The final piece of the puzzle was about to fall into place. Mr. Thomas's voice, a low rumble barely audible over the hum of the bakery's refrigerator, sent a shiver down my spine. He spoke in hushed tones, each word carefully chosen as if he feared the very air itself would betray his secret. Mrs. Roberts, he whispered, the name tasting like ash in my mouth. I recorded their conversation. In the hotel parking lot. I used specialized equipment, high-quality directional microphones and a shielded recorder to avoid detection. They were completely oblivious. I'm sending it to you now. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat echoing the turmoil within. Thank you, Thomas, I managed, my voice a shaky breath. Send me the file immediately. Minutes felt like eons. Then, a digital whisper arrived, the audio file. The familiar chime of my phone seemed to pierce the suffocating silence of the bakery, the scent of freshly baked bread suddenly cloying, suffocating. I retreated to my small office, the worn wooden desk a familiar comfort in this encroaching storm. I slipped on my headphones, the soft leather a stark contrast to the icy dread gripping my heart. I pressed play. Allison's voice, crisp and devoid of warmth, sliced through the quiet. It was a voice I barely recognized, a voice that belonged to a stranger inhabiting the body of my stepson's wife. Dad, she hissed, her words sharp and precise, like shards of glass, hurry up with that fake contract. I want that whole bakery chain, all those stores, under my control. And that old hag, out of the house. Now. The words hung in the air, a venomous sting, each syllable a personal affront. A physical blow resonated in my chest, a sharp pain mirroring the crushing weight of her betrayal. Then, Noah's voice, smooth and deceptively confident, filled my ears. The voice I once loved, the voice that whispered promises under the San Diego stars, now dripped with calculated deceit. Don't worry about those papers, sweetheart. Juliet doesn't suspect a thing. Leave it to me. She trusts me implicitly. The words were a twisted knife, slowly turning in my gut, each rotation deepening the wound. It wasn't just infidelity, it was a calculated, meticulous dismantling of everything I had built. My bakery chain, my life's work, born from countless sleepless nights, flour dusting my hair and my hands perpetually sticky with sweet dough. I remembered the early days, the grueling hours spent perfecting each recipe, the endless runs to hotels and events to deliver my pastries, my reputation built on quality and dedication. It was all mine, a testament to my sweat, my tears, my unwavering commitment. Noah had never once touched the oven, never once faced the relentless pace of a busy counter, never once negotiated a contract. Yet, he, along with Allison, planned to steal it all, the bakery, my home, my very identity. Tears threatened to overwhelm me, but I fought them back, a grim determination hardening my resolve. I copied the audio file onto the flash drive where I stored other evidence, bank statements, emails, subtle inconsistencies in our joint accounts. I meticulously documented the date and time of the recording, each inscription a small act of defiance against the chaos. The next morning, while the scent of brewing coffee mingled with the sweet aroma of freshly baked croissants, my phone vibrated, bringing another wave of nausea. Thomas had delivered more evidence, a series of photos, crisp and clear, taken with a telephoto lens. They showed Noah and Allison huddled in Noah's car, a thick stack of papers spread between them. Allison, her red pen a weapon in her hand, marked the documents with fierce intensity. Noah, beside her, nodded and smiled, his complicity evident in every gesture. I overheard something, Thomas texted. It seems they're using a contact at the notary's office to finalize the transfer. I'm investigating further. I zoomed in on the image, my breath catching in my throat. I couldn't decipher the legal jargon, but I knew those weren't standard business documents. These were blueprints for theft, meticulous and cold. Surrounded by the warm, inviting pastries, the sweet scent a cruel irony, I felt my world crumble. Again, I played the audio file, letting the chilling words wash over me. That wretched old woman, Allison had called me. The memory of her arrival, my naive attempts to welcome her into the family, the shared recipes and the genuine affection I'd offered, felt like a grotesque mockery. And Noah, the man I'd loved since our teenage years in San Diego, the man who had sworn undying love, had reduced me to a fool, a pawn in his carefully orchestrated game. Mrs. Peterson, a regular customer, her kind face etched with concern, entered the bakery. "Juliet," she said, her voice filled with warmth, "your bakery's booming. That chain of stores is impressive. I'm so proud of you." Her words were a bittersweet balm, a stark contrast to the bitter truth hidden beneath my forced smile. "Thank you, Mrs. Peterson," I replied, my voice betraying none of the turmoil within. "I'm doing my best." As I handed her the pastries, a hollow ache spread through me. Would she still see me as a strong woman, or would the truth unveil me as a heartbroken fool, betrayed by the very people I'd called family? Back in my office, the silence was deafening. I wanted to weep, to unleash the torrent of hurt, but only a cold rage burned within me, potent and steady, mirroring the heat of the bakery oven. That night, during our strained dinner, Noah sat across from me, his face illuminated by the harsh yellow kitchen light, an unsettling mask of normalcy. He ate silently, his monotone voice utterly devoid of emotion, as if the world wasn't on the brink of implosion. "Juliet," he said, his words casual yet laced with a dangerous undercurrent, "I have some important business papers to sign this week. Perhaps you should review them. They're rather complicated." His words were a test, a subtle attempt to draw me into his deceit. I picked up a piece of bread, the gesture a desperate attempt at composure, while Allison's venomous words played on repeat in my head, "Dad, hurry up and sign the fake contracts." "Yes," I replied, my voice carefully controlled, "I'll look at them later. I'm tired tonight." He nodded, taking a sip of wine, his expression devoid of genuine emotion, a predator biding its time. But behind that mask, I saw the man ready to pounce, to seize everything I had built, his smile a chilling promise of destruction. As the wine loosened his tongue, he began to slur his words, rambling about a particularly difficult client. I nodded, feigning attentiveness, while silently screaming, "Do you really think I'm that naive?" When he stumbled to the bedroom, leaving his car keys gleaming on the nightstand, a mocking beacon of his arrogance, I knew my moment had arrived. My heart hammered against my ribs, a war drum signaling the start of my counteroffensive. This was my chance, my opportunity for retribution. I crept into the bedroom, moving with the agonizing slowness of someone wading through quicksand. Each footfall felt like a betrayal of the numb silence I desperately craved, a betrayal of the fragile hope clinging to the edges of my shattered heart. The air hung heavy with the unspoken accusations of the past, a suffocating weight that pressed down on me, the scent of impending conflict mixing with the faint, familiar smell of lavender from the air freshener Noah always insisted on. My hand, trembling slightly, closed around the car keys, cold, metallic comfort in this storm of emotions. The garage was a cavern of shadows, the only illumination spilling from the sickly yellow sodium lamp outside, casting long, distorted figures on the walls. The world outside seemed to hold its breath, the night a hushed conspirator in my silent fury. The insistent chirping of crickets, a relentless, maddening rhythm, seemed to mock my carefully controlled rage, a soundtrack to the slow-burning inferno within me. My phone's flashlight beam, feeble and inadequate, landed on Noah's old SUV, a hulking, metallic beast, a silent witness to his deceit, to the years of carefully constructed lies. It stood there, a monument to broken trust. The door creaked open, the stale air inside heavy with the lingering scent of gasoline, a sharp, acrid counterpoint to the lingering sweetness of some cloying perfume, Allison's, no doubt. The familiar scent of betrayal clung to the upholstery, a phantom touch that sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. My hand, shaking now more violently, opened the glove compartment. And there it was, the small, innocuous tube of lubricant, its cap askew, the edge stained with dried residue, a damning, irrefutable piece of evidence. It wasn't just the physical evidence, it was the blatant disregard, the casualness of it all, that stung the most. They hadn't even bothered to properly conceal it. It felt like holding a piece of their secret life in my hand, a tangible representation of their shared betrayal. It was a confirmation, a sickening validation of everything I'd suspected. They were still playing their game, their twisted, clandestine dance of infidelity, their secret language whispered in the dark. I carried the tube to the kitchen, the cold porcelain of the counter a stark contrast to the burning heat inside me. The lemon-scented soap felt strangely inadequate against the lingering stain of their betrayal. I scrubbed, hard, until my skin was raw, trying to cleanse not just my hands, but also the searing pain that etched itself onto my soul. The fresh scent of lemon, sharp and clean, did little to quell the roiling storm inside. It only served as a temporary distraction, a fleeting moment of clarity amidst the chaos. I opened the tool drawer, my gaze falling upon a tube of clear industrial superglue. It was the same superglue I'd used countless times at the bakery, a familiar tool now transformed into a weapon of calculated revenge, a tool of justice in my hands. Carefully, methodically, I unscrewed the cap of the lubricant, the metallic click echoing in the quiet kitchen, a small sound against the vastness of my pain. Drop by drop, I filled the tube with the superglue, my movements deliberate, precise, each drop a small victory in this silent battle. I wiped the nozzle clean, shook the tube gently, and tested the consistency. It flowed smoothly, seamlessly, mimicking the original lubricant perfectly. At a glance, indistinguishable. A faint, bitter smile touched my lips, a stark contrast to the raging tempest within. This wasn't a game, it was a calculated maneuver, the first strike in a war for my sanity, for my future, for the future of my son. I placed the modified tube back in the glove compartment, meticulously rearranging the floor mat and adjusting the driver's seat to its original position, erasing any trace of my presence. I opened the trunk, the dim light revealing the usual detritus of a life lived carelessly, crumpled shopping bags, an empty water bottle, and then, my heart skipped a beat, an unused condom lying discarded in a corner. A wave of nausea threatened to overwhelm me, yet, perversely, I wasn't surprised. I documented everything, capturing each detail with my phone, adding to the growing mountain of evidence, each image a cold, hard fact, another piece of the puzzle, another brick in the wall I was building against Noah and Allison's lies. Each image was a silent scream. Back inside the house, I replaced the keys precisely next to Noah's alarm clock, a calculated act of seeming normalcy, a deceptive tranquility. I picked up an old book, feigning a casual composure, and sat on the living room sofa, the dim light highlighting the worn pages, but my eyes could not focus on the words. My thoughts were a chaotic torrent, a maelstrom of betrayal, deception, and the crushing weight of the future. The image of Daniel, my son, his innocent face radiating the blissful ignorance of his parents' treachery, stabbed at my heart. How could I shatter his world? How could I reveal this unspeakable truth? The years of sweat and struggle, the 40 years spent building my bakery empire, the countless nights of sacrifice, the arguments, the compromises, the relentless battles with Noah, my husband, to defend my dream. He hadn't understood then, he'd pretended to support me. Now, the truth was a cold, harsh revelation. He'd been biding his time, waiting for the opportune moment to claim everything for himself. He had been systematically dismantling my life, piece by piece. An hour later, Noah stumbled into the kitchen, his movements sluggish and drowsy, searching for water. He saw the keys on the counter, his gaze lingering for a moment, but suspicion never touched his eyes. "Still up, Juliet," he mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. My forced smile felt brittle and strained. "Just reading," I replied, my voice calm, deceptively composed. "Finish your water and get back to bed." He nodded, drank, and retreated to the bedroom, his snores soon filling the quiet house. I watched him, a stranger in a familiar bed, a man who once swore undying love, now orchestrating my downfall. But he didn't know I'd already begun my counteroffensive. Dawn arrived, casting a hesitant light through the bakery window. The familiar scent of flour and yeast greeted me. The rhythmic kneading of the dough was a physical manifestation of my rage, each push and fold a small act of defiance. The hotel order was large, and I poured all my suppressed fury into every twist and turn of the dough, each croissant, each delicate pastry a testament to my unyielding spirit. Returning home for breakfast, I carefully maintained a mask of composure. Noah was already up, a cup of black coffee in his hand. I served him eggs and toast, my movements precise, my emotions carefully concealed. "Noah," I said, my voice measured and steady, "I'm traveling to Nashville tomorrow to sign a contract with a new partner. I'll be back late. Can you handle dinner?" I watched him closely, observing his reaction. His surprise was palpable, but something else glinted in his eyes, not concern, but relief. A visible weight had been lifted. "A big contract?" he asked, his touch feigning tenderness as he took my hand. "Don't worry. Go ahead. I'll take care of things." But that spark in his eyes, that subtle curl of his lips, the unmistakable sense of liberation, pierced my heart. He wanted me gone. I understood exactly why. I smiled, a fragile imitation of happiness. "Thanks," I murmured. "I'll call if I'm late." He took another sip of coffee, then rose abruptly, claiming he needed to get to the office early. As he left, I noticed his phone on the table, the screen illuminating a missed call. Allison Thomas. My heart pounded, a frantic drumbeat against the silence. Before I could react, Noah returned, snatching the phone with a clumsy haste, turning off the screen before I could even see it clearly. "Forgot it," he mumbled, forcing a strained smile. And then he was gone. I stood there, watching the door close, the sting of betrayal a sharp, physical blow. He wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. The game was on. And I was ready to play. That day, the quiet war began. The day blurred into a monotonous routine, the rhythmic thud of my feet on the pavement, the repetitive signing of invoices, the practiced smile plastered on my face as I delivered bread to countless customers. Each interaction felt hollow, a stark contrast to the churning storm within me. My mind, a relentless carousel, was consumed by Noah and Allison. Their clandestine affair, a cruel betrayal whispered behind my back in Daniel's unsuspecting eyes, gnawed at my sanity. I couldn't simply accept their deception. I craved concrete proof, the irrefutable evidence that would force a confession, a raw admission from their own lips, spoken in the unguarded moments when they believed themselves unseen, unheard. That evening, I feigned exhaustion, a weary facade meticulously crafted to lull suspicion. "I need to catch an early bus tomorrow," I mumbled to Noah, my voice thick with manufactured fatigue. "I'm going to bed." He nodded, a perfunctory pat on my shoulder, a gesture as hollow as his words. "Rest, Juliet. Be careful on your trip tomorrow," he murmured, the concern in his voice a jarring dissonance to the betrayal simmering beneath the surface. I slid into bed, the sheets cool against my skin, but my senses were far from dormant. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of fabric, became amplified, my hearing sharpened to a razor's edge. The clock ticked relentlessly towards midnight, each second a hammer blow against the fragile peace I tried to maintain. Finally, Noah's rhythmic snoring ceased, replaced by the almost imperceptible sound of him rising from the bed. A faint, ethereal glow, the pale light of his phone, cut through the darkness, a ghostly beacon guiding his clandestine movements. He slipped out of the room, his stealthy departure a silent testament to his guilt, believing me to be lost in slumber. My heart, a trapped bird fluttering against its cage, pounded against my ribs. Yet, I remained motionless, a statue sculpted from patience and simmering rage. Then, with the grace of a shadow, I followed, my footsteps barely disturbing the quietude of the house. I crept along the hallway, my breath held captive in my chest, until I reached the living room. There, I pressed myself against the thick, velvet curtain, the rich fabric a shield against detection. From my vantage point, I saw him standing in the dim corner near the window, the pale light illuminating his tense profile. He raised his phone to his ear, his voice a low, conspiratorial murmur. "Yes, of course. Come over to the house tomorrow. We won't have to sneak around to a hotel anymore. Juliet's out of town signing a contract, she'll be back late." A soft, silvery giggle floated from the receiver, Allison's voice, sweet and undeniably familiar. "That's great, Dad. Finally, we can relax." Noah chuckled, a low, throaty sound devoid of any remorse. "Yeah, come early. I'll be waiting." The words hung in the air, heavy with betrayal. My blood, a molten river of rage, surged through my veins. This wasn't just infidelity, it was a desecration, a violation of my home, Daniel's home, our sanctuary, turned into a clandestine rendezvous. Silently, I retreated to the bedroom, the weight of their treachery heavy on my shoulders. I opened a drawer, my fingers trembling slightly as they closed around Daniel's old digital recorder, a gift from his college days, meant to capture lectures, now repurposed as a weapon against their deception. I replaced the depleted battery with a fresh one, the whirring of the device a small, comforting sound. I carefully tucked it behind the bookshelf beside the headboard, ensuring it would capture every whispered word, every shared laugh. A family photo, a cherished snapshot of the four of us at Daniel and Allison's wedding, served as the perfect camouflage. I carefully adjusted the cable and placed the frame just so, hiding the recorder's presence. Looking at their smiling faces in the photograph, the joy in their eyes now a grotesque parody of their current actions, a bitter taste filled my mouth. Before returning to bed, I performed a final check, ensuring the recorder was actively recording. The photo frame hid the cable perfectly. I lay down, eyes wide open in the darkness, my mind a whirlwind of calculated fury. I reached for the bedside clock and set the alarm far earlier than usual. I closed my eyes, but sleep remained elusive. I was ready. The next phase of my plan required precision, a quiet and insidious revenge. The pre-dawn darkness of 5 a.m. enveloped the house. Only the faint, melancholic glow of streetlights pierced the gloom. The house was still, the only sound Noah's steady snoring emanating from the bedroom. I stood in the kitchen, a cup of cold coffee trembling in my hand, staring at the skillet of oil already warming on the stove. This was the final act, a simple smoke trap, yet sufficient to expose their deception to the world. I carefully tied a thin string to the stove's igniter, running it across the room to the window, where I secured it to a heavy, old coffee can I'd found in a cabinet. A gentle pull from a distance would ignite the oil, creating a thick, black smoke that would surely alarm the neighbors. I opened the window slightly to allow for ventilation. I tested the mechanism, a plume of thick, black smoke billowing upwards, swirling into ominous spirals. I extinguished the flame immediately, checking meticulously to ensure no trace remained that could arouse Noah's suspicion. I slipped on my jacket, grabbed my oversized purse, and prepared my exit, a carefully constructed performance of innocent departure. Before leaving, I entered the bedroom, gently shaking Noah awake. "I have to leave for the bus station now," I whispered, my voice calm and controlled. "I'm going to sign that contract. I'll likely be back late tonight." He opened his eyes, his voice thick with sleep. "All right, be careful, Juliet. Call me if you need anything," he mumbled, burying his face back into the pillow. I looked at the man I had once loved, the man I had trusted implicitly, now lying there, oblivious to the carefully laid trap, my heart heavy with a sorrow that mirrored the rage. Instead of heading to the bus station, I crossed the street to Mrs. Peterson's house. Mrs. Peterson, my kind neighbor and confidant, opened her door, concern etched on her face at the sight of my purse and my early arrival. "Juliet, what are you doing up so early? Is something wrong?" she asked with genuine affection. I forced a smile, a mask hiding the turmoil within. "Mrs. Peterson, could I possibly stay here for a few hours? I need to keep an eye on my house." She frowned slightly, but without a word, she poured me a steaming cup of coffee and offered me a chair by the window, a perfect vantage point overlooking my house, the stage where the truth would soon be revealed. Around 10 a.m., a taxi pulled up in front of my house. Allison emerged, clad in a light floral dress and dark sunglasses, her clandestine attire a testament to her guilt. Noah quickly ushered her inside, a furtive glance around betraying his nervousness. I clutched my coffee cup tightly, my heart hammering against my ribs. "It's time," I murmured, my voice barely audible, as I activated the app on my phone, connecting to the hidden recorder, its silent testimony ready to expose their lies. The muffled sounds of Allison's laughter, the clinking of crystal glasses, and the thud of heavy footsteps seeped through my headphones, a discordant symphony playing out in the quiet of my bedroom. It was a chilling soundtrack to the slow burn of my revenge. Then, Noah's deep, resonant voice cut through the air, thick with a false bravado that grated on my nerves. "All right, we don't have to hide in a cheap motel anymore," he declared, the words dripping with the smug satisfaction of a man who believes he's won. Allison's reply was a shrill peal of laughter, laced with a cruel edge. "You really know how to pick your moments, darling. The old hag is gone, right?" The words, "old hag," hung in the air, a cruel barb aimed directly at me. I could feel the rage simmering within, a potent cocktail of betrayal and injustice threatening to boil over. My lips tightened, a silent battle waged against the urge to scream, to lash out. Instead, I bit back the fury, my jaw aching with the effort of restraint. The bed creaked, the rhythmic groan accompanied by sounds that painted a far too vivid picture of their brazen intimacy, sounds I desperately tried to ignore. "Just a little longer, Juliet," I whispered to myself, the words a mantra against the tide of my rising fury. Just a little longer. The next few minutes stretched out, an agonizing eternity. Then, a sharp, piercing scream shattered the tense silence. "What the hell is this? We're stuck." Allison's voice was raw with panic, a desperate plea laced with the terror of utter helplessness. Noah's response was a low growl, a mixture of frustration and fear. "Shut up. Wait, let me see." A slow, satisfied smile played on my lips. With a barely perceptible touch, I activated the smoke trap remotely, a carefully planned mechanism springing into action. I could feel the taut tug of the string, a silent confirmation of the trap's engagement. The stove ignited with a roar, the flames licking at the skillet of oil. Within seconds, thick, black smoke billowed from the kitchen window, spiraling upwards in ominous plumes, a dark, silent scream rising into the twilight sky. Across the street, Mrs. Peterson, my elderly neighbor, gasped, her eyes wide with alarm as she gazed out her window at the unfolding drama. "Juliet. Your house is on fire," her voice, sharp with concern, cut through the thickening air. I feigned terror, a trembling hand clutching my coffee cup, but inside, a cold calm settled over me. Everything was unfolding precisely as I had envisioned. The carefully orchestrated chaos began to spread. Neighbors, drawn by the acrid smell of smoke and the sight of the billowing black clouds, spilled out into their yards, their voices rising in a chorus of alarm. "Juliet's house is on fire. Call the firefighters." Mr. Miller, a quick-thinking man who lived 2 doors down, immediately pulled out his phone, his fingers flying across the keypad as he dialed the emergency services. I remained impassive, my gaze fixed on the rising smoke, a grim satisfaction settling in my heart. Through the headphones, Allison's voice became increasingly desperate, a high-pitched whine of terror. "Noah, do something. I can't move." Noah's response was a strangled roar. "Don't scream. I'm trying." But I knew their efforts were futile. The industrial-strength superglue I'd surreptitiously replaced with the ordinary adhesive had already begun its insidious work, binding them together, ensuring their humiliation would be absolute and complete. I allowed myself a moment to visualize their struggle, their terror. A flicker of satisfaction, dark and sharp, cut through the calm. It wasn't cruelty that fueled me, it was righteous anger, a fierce determination to reclaim what had been stolen from me. They had dared to take my bakery, the lifeblood of my family, my livelihood, my very honor. Now, they would pay the price. The smoke continued to climb, a thick, malevolent shroud rising against the darkening sky. The neighbors, a growing crowd, milled about, their whispers and shouted questions blending into a cacophony of confusion. "What's going on?" someone asked. "Where's Juliet?" another voice inquired. "She went out of town for work," a third offered, his words echoing the carefully crafted lie I'd spread. Mrs. Peterson, beside me, watched me with narrowed eyes, her gaze piercing, her suspicion palpable. She squeezed my hand gently, a silent acknowledgement of her suspicions. I didn't need to explain. The truth, like the smoke billowing from my house, was about to engulf them all. 10 minutes later, the wail of a fire truck's siren sliced through the night, the sound a grim prelude to the climax of my plan. The red vehicle roared down the street, its tires screeching as it skidded to a halt before my house. Daniel, my son, leaped from the driver's seat, his firefighter's uniform crisp and stark against the smoky backdrop, his face etched with concern and a rising sense of urgency. His voice boomed, clear and commanding, "Get the equipment ready, quick. There might be people inside." A sharp pang of pain tore through me. My son, always so proud of his family, so fiercely loyal, was about to confront the most painful truth. I yearned to run to him, to hold him close, to whisper, "I'm so sorry, Daniel," but I couldn't. My plan, meticulously laid out, demanded its completion. I remained still, my heart a battlefield of conflicting emotions, as the drama unfolded before my eyes. The smoke, thick and unrelenting, fueled the firefighters' belief in a raging inferno. Daniel, a leader among men, led the charge, his sledgehammer crashing against the front door. The splintering wood echoed loudly in the night, a jarring counterpoint to the rising tension. His team followed close behind, hoses unfurled, extinguishers at the ready. From my headphones, I heard Noah's desperate pleas, punctuated by Allison's strangled sobs. "Do something, Noah. I can't move." Noah growled, "Shut up. Don't scream." I clenched the phone tightly, my grip white-knuckled, as the audio from the hidden microphone continued to transmit their agonizing plight. They were trapped, their humiliation complete. Their suffering was exactly what I had envisioned. Daniel burst into the bedroom, and the image of what he found played out in my mind's eye, his own father and his wife, naked and entangled, their bodies glued together, their faces contorted in a mask of pain and disbelief. The scene played through my headphones, amplified in intensity, even though I was not physically present. Daniel's voice faltered, filled with a disbelief so profound it was almost palpable. "What? What is this?" A gasp, a murmur of astonishment from one of the firefighters, followed by a nervous laugh instantly silenced by Daniel's authoritative shout, "Silence." It was more than just an order, it was the desperate attempt to shield his own pain, to maintain a semblance of control in the face of this horrifying revelation. A firefighter rushed out, announcing, "Chief, the smoke is under control." It was just a small oil fire. Nothing serious. But Daniel remained silent, his shock evident. I imagined him still frozen in the bedroom, wrestling with the brutal truth staring him in the face. The neighbors, drawn by the earlier commotion, began to arrive, their whispers turning into open gasps of shock and disbelief as the situation unfolded before them. "What's happening?" "It's Noah and his daughter-in-law," a woman shouted, her voice laced with astonishment. "Oh my God, how could this have happened?" Another echoed the sentiment. Mrs. Peterson, still at my side, discreetly began recording the scene with her phone, slowly, deliberately moving the camera closer to the writhing couple, their faces a tapestry of pain and shame. Her gaze, full of a mixture of pity and righteous anger, fell on me. "Juliet," she whispered, her voice low but accusatory, "you knew about this, didn't you?" I didn't answer, merely nodding softly, my eyes locked on the escalating drama unfolding before me. The truth, raw and unfiltered, was about to be laid bare before everyone. The thud of Daniel's boots on the hardwood floor signaled his return. Through the headset, I heard Noah's raspy voice, a desperate attempt at regaining control. "Get everyone out of here. Close the door, Daniel." But it was too late. The neighborhood had gathered, their faces a mixture of shock, disgust, and condemnation. Their hushed whispers, a chorus of shame, hung heavy in the air. Father-in-law and daughter-in-law caught in the act. "Unbelievable," a man exclaimed, his voice a mixture of disbelief and revulsion. "Poor Juliet. How did it come to this?" The question hung unanswered, the unspoken answer a testament to the depth of their betrayal and the completeness of my revenge. The smoke, the fire, the humiliation, it was all a meticulously crafted symphony of retribution, a final act in a long-playing drama of betrayal and justice. The acrid smell of smoke still hung heavy in the air, a lingering testament to the inferno that had consumed the Petersons' home just hours before. A collective sigh, heavy with the weight of unspoken horror, escaped the onlookers. The firefighters, their faces grim under the flickering streetlights, hesitated only for a moment before acting. The scene, even now, replayed in my mind with nauseating clarity, the tangled, grotesque tableau of Noah and Allison, their bodies fused together in a horrifying parody of intimacy. With a practiced efficiency born of countless tragedies, the firemen carefully wrapped the couple in clean, white sheets, trying to shield the horrifying sight from the growing crowd. The sheets, however, offered little comfort, only a flimsy veil against the reality that was now unfolding before a horrified neighborhood. Allison's sobs, ragged and broken, pierced the air, a stark counterpoint to the low groans of pain escaping Noah's lips. "Please," she gasped, her voice raw with agony, "do something. I can't bear it anymore." Noah, his face pale and drawn, mumbled something unintelligible, a desperate plea lost in the rising murmur of the crowd. "Don't let anyone see us," he whispered, though the damage was already done. The spectacle was inescapable. The neighbors, their faces a mask of shocked disbelief and horrified fascination, stood like statues, their reactions ranging from outright revulsion, a mixture of disgust and pity twisting their features, to cruel, whispered laughter and head shakes of profound disappointment. It was a macabre tableau, unfolding under the harsh glare of streetlights, a scene that would forever be etched into the memories of everyone present. Their intertwined forms, awkwardly hoisted onto stretchers, became a horrifying centerpiece amidst the growing whispers and gasps. "What a disgrace," a woman shrieked, her voice sharp and judgmental. "A father-in-law and daughter-in-law. My God, the filth." The words hung in the air, heavy with moral outrage, amplified by the shocked murmurs of the onlookers. The crowd, a dense and judgmental throng, parted to let the ambulance pass, its siren a mournful wail cutting through the night. Even amidst the chaos, I heard snippets of conversation, sharp barbs of cruel judgment. "What a show!" Mr. Miller, a man known for his caustic wit and lack of empathy, bellowed, his voice laced with malicious glee. "I can't believe there are two people so shameless in this world." An elderly woman, her face etched with a sorrow that transcended mere judgment, whispered to her companion, "Poor Juliet." I stood amongst them, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I maintained the facade of a shocked bystander, a woman who had just arrived, breathless, from the bus stop, desperately trying to appear unaffected. Daniel, however, stood motionless in the Petersons' yard, a statue of despair, his arms hanging limply at his sides, his face the color of bone china. His teammates, their faces pale and averted, quietly gathered their tools, their usual camaraderie dissolving under the weight of the unspeakable. I understood Daniel's shock wasn't solely from witnessing his father and wife entangled in such a compromising position. It was the betrayal, the shattering of his trust in the two people he loved most, that truly wounded him. The weight of his pain was palpable, a silent scream echoing in the stillness of the night. I longed to run to him, to offer comfort and solace, to tell him how deeply sorry I was for this horrifying intrusion into his life. But I held back, my own grief and guilt warring with my instinct to comfort him. Instead, I walked quietly beside Mrs. Peterson, who, with her usual quiet dignity, accompanied me to the hospital. We sat in the hushed hallway on the third floor, the air thick with the antiseptic smell and the unspoken anxieties of the waiting families. I maintained my composure, projecting the image of a distraught wife whose home had just been ravaged by fire. The hours stretched into an eternity. Finally, a doctor emerged, his brow beaded with sweat, his face etched with exhaustion. He approached me, his voice low and strained. "Mrs. Roberts," he began, "we managed to separate them. Fortunately, there was no serious internal damage, just some superficial burns. They will need some ointment." I nodded, feigning relief, while my fingers stealthily brushed against my purse, where I had secreted 2 tubes of thick, pungent mustard. A wicked plan, carefully rehearsed in my mind for weeks, was about to reach its fruition. "Thank you, doctor," I murmured, my voice trembling slightly to add to the illusion of distress. "May I see them?" He nodded, leading me to the nurse's station. There, I was given 2 tubes of burn ointment, the perfect opportunity. The young nurse, her face filled with a mixture of pity and concern, handed me the tubes. "Ma'am," she said softly, her voice filled with compassion, "this is a terrible situation. I'm so very sorry." I offered a weak smile, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and anticipation. The moment her back was turned, with practiced ease, I switched the tubes, replacing the healing ointment with the mustard. My hands moved swiftly, confidently, each movement precise and practiced as if the act were second nature. I entered the hospital room, a tube of mustard held in my hand, my face carefully crafted to convey concern. "Noah, Allison," I said softly, "are you all right?" Allison lay in the bed, her hair a tangled mess, her eyes red and swollen, unable to meet my gaze. Noah, still pale and weak, mumbled, "Juliet, I can explain." But I didn't allow him the opportunity. I placed the tube of mustard on the bedside table, my movements deliberate, my actions speaking louder than any words could. Then, I left the room, closing the door behind me with a soft click. A few minutes later, a blood-curdling scream tore through the quiet hallway, shattering the fragile peace. Allison's cries of pain were agonizing, punctuated by Noah's angry curses. "It burns," she shrieked, her voice rising to a fever pitch. "My skin is on fire." Noah's moans turned to angry, incoherent outbursts. "What the hell is this? Who did this?" The entire hallway erupted into a maelstrom of activity. Patients and their families emerged from their rooms, drawn by the commotion. I heard whispers, hushed and horrified, spreading like wildfire. "It's them," an old woman whispered to her son, "the couple from the video this morning. The father-in-law and the daughter-in-law. What a disgrace." Another voice chimed in, devoid of sympathy, "They deserve it." The doctor rushed into the room, frantically ordering the nurses to clean their skin and apply a neutralizing agent. But the damage was done. The humiliation was complete, a public spectacle broadcast across the neighborhood and the internet thanks to Mrs. Peterson's viral video. I stood in the hallway, listening to the murmurs, a chilling satisfaction mingling with a deep sense of loss. I felt like the whole world was witnessing the downfall of those two traitors. When the crowd finally dispersed, Daniel entered the room, clutching a thick manila folder in his hand. I had called him immediately after the ambulance left, urging him to retrieve the envelope containing the evidence and the prepared divorce papers. He handed me the folder, his gaze empty, his silence more eloquent than any words could ever be. I opened the folder, extracted the documents, and laid them on the table before Noah and Allison. I looked at Noah directly in the eyes, my voice devoid of emotion, cold and resolute. 40 years of marriage ends here. Sign these papers, and then do whatever you want. Just disappear from my son's life and mine." Allison collapsed, her sobs racking her body, her eyes pleading with Daniel for forgiveness. "Honey," she cried, her voice choked with tears, "forgive me. I made a mistake. Please, I beg you, forgive me." But Daniel's gaze remained unwavering, as hard and cold as granite. He turned and left without a word, leaving Allison's pleas hanging unanswered in the heavy silence. Noah reached for my hand, his voice trembling, desperate. "Juliet, listen to me. I didn't want this." I pulled my hand away, cutting him off decisively. "Don't say anything else, Noah. You chose this path." He yelled out desperately, "Juliet, please." But the nurse entered, her voice sharp and authoritative. "Quiet. This is a hospital." I turned and left, my heart heavy with a sorrow that was both personal and profound. In the hallway, I found Daniel leaning against the wall, his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I placed my hand on his shoulder, but he didn't lift his head. "Mom," he whispered, his voice broken with grief, "why did it have to be Dad? Why her?" I didn't answer. I just hugged him tightly, silently sharing his pain, understanding the depth of his loss. In that moment, I knew that Noah and Allison had lost everything, their honor, their marriage, their carefully constructed, wicked plan. But Daniel and I had also lost a family, a loss that would take time to heal. The weeks that followed were filled with a quiet, aching grief, a slow, painful process of rebuilding our lives from the ashes of betrayal. After the scandal involving Noah and Allison, a storm that had threatened to swallow my little bakery whole, business boomed. It was a strange kind of blessing, a testament to the unwavering support of my community. The tiny bell above the door jingled incessantly, a cheerful counterpoint to the turmoil I'd recently endured. Customers, faces etched with concern and now brimming with relief, flowed in and out like a gentle tide. Mrs. Peterson, her kind eyes twinkling behind her spectacles, clutched a bag of my freshly baked flan. "Juliet," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "you are an inspiration. The entire neighborhood is so proud of your resilience. You defended your family legacy against such vicious attacks, such blatant lies, frankly, with incredible strength and grace." I managed a weak smile, the words a balm on my still raw wounds. Their praise, their unwavering loyalty, was a lifeline. They called me strong, a pillar of fortitude, but only I knew the truth. My strength was forged in the fires of heartbreak, tempered by years of struggle. The oven, a constant companion for 40 years, a silent witness to countless triumphs and setbacks, now served as a poignant reminder of Noah and Allison, those vipers who had attempted to steal everything I held dear, my business, my peace of mind, even my dignity. But they had failed. I was still standing. My bakery, my sanctuary, remained. And Daniel, my son, my steadfast rock, was by my side. Daniel moved in immediately after the legal dust settled, a silent guardian against the lingering shadows of the scandal. He didn't speak much about the ordeal, about the way Noah's cunning and Allison's manipulative charm had nearly shattered our lives. The cheerful, ever-laughing Daniel I knew was gone, replaced by a man carrying a weight heavier than his years. His eyes, usually sparkling with mirth, now held a deep, shadowed well, reflecting the unspoken pain he carried. "Mom," he said quietly that first night, his voice a low rumble, as he settled his suitcase in the spare room, a room that had once held the joyous chaos of family dinners, "I want to stay here for a while. I'm going to help you run the bakery. Take calls, talk to clients, whatever you need." He didn't need to say more. The unspoken words hung heavy in the air, a silent pact of shared grief and mutual support. I pulled him into a hug, the warmth of his body a comforting anchor in the storm-tossed sea of my emotions. I just nodded, my throat thick with unshed tears, understanding his need for quiet strength, for the solace of family. I needed it too. Every morning began with a quiet ritual, a shared act of rebuilding. I prepped the oven, arranging the trays of dough with practiced ease, the familiar motions a calming rhythm in the midst of chaos. Daniel, meanwhile, meticulously reviewed invoices, his fingers flying across the keyboard, a focused intensity in his eyes. "Mom," his voice, though calm, lacked its usual bright lilt, "the Grand Hotel wants to increase their sweet pastry order for next week." The phone call, another small victory in the larger battle. "All right, confirm the order. I'll prepare more dough." These small, simple moments were a symphony of healing, a slow, steady rebuilding of a life shattered. There were no more calculating smiles from Noah, no more honeyed, manipulative words from Allison, only the comforting presence of Daniel and the familiar scent of baking bread. Dinners were simple affairs, just the two of us, seated opposite each other in our small kitchen. Simple meals of rice and beans, chicken, or just crusty bread with strong, black coffee. One evening, a tentative smile played on his lips, the first genuine smile I'd seen since the scandal. "Mom, can you make me some flan this weekend?" Relief washed over me, a wave of gratitude. "Of course," I replied, my voice thick with emotion, "but you have to help me stir the caramel." He nodded, his eyes shining with a fragile hope. In that shared moment, over the simmering caramel, I felt the first stirrings of healing, the slow, tentative mending of our broken family. I began to carve out time for myself, a luxury I had denied myself for 40 years, lost in the demanding rhythm of my business. I joined a cooking club at the community center, a gathering of women my age, sharing recipes and stories, their lives a tapestry of shared joys and sorrows. "Juliet," one woman exclaimed, laughing as I presented a tray of my flan, "you make the best flan in the whole neighborhood." "It's a little trick I learned back in San Diego," I replied, a genuine smile finally touching my lips. The simple act of sharing, of connecting with others, eased the weight of the past. I also started attending church on Sundays, finding solace in the quiet reverence of the sanctuary. The stained glass windows cast a kaleidoscope of color on my face, as I prayed not for Noah or Allison, but for Daniel, for myself, for the strength to move forward, to rebuild, to heal. Even the gossipy conversations with Mrs. Peterson in the town square offered a sense of normalcy. "You know, Juliet," she'd say, her eyes gleaming with amusement, "everyone's still talking about Noah and Allison, but they all agree, you're the one who won." I'd smile faintly, the victory bittersweet. I won, perhaps, I'd think, but the price had been steep. The cost of victory had been the almost complete loss of my family. But slowly, subtly, things began to shift. Daniel became less withdrawn, his voice regaining its former vibrancy as he shared stories of his work as a firefighter. "We put out a fire at the market yesterday," he recounted one evening during dinner. "It was pretty dangerous, Mom, but thankfully, nobody was hurt." My heart swelled with pride as I listened, the familiar warmth of maternal love beginning to thaw the frozen landscape of my grief. "Please be careful," I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. "You're all I have left." He looked at me with a tenderness that melted years of worry. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll never leave you alone." Those words, simple yet profound, were a potent medicine, restoring faith in the enduring power of family, of love, of resilience. One afternoon, the bakery buzzing with activity, the little bell above the door a persistent, cheerful chime, I sat at the cash register, observing the bustling street scene. The aroma of warm bread hung heavy in the air, a comforting blanket against the lingering chill of the past. As I surveyed the trays of flan and pastries, I reflected on my journey, on the decades of sweat and tears that had gone into building this little empire. From a wide-eyed girl in San Diego to a woman who knew the true meaning of endurance, I had faced unimaginable hardship and emerged victorious. Noah and Allison, with their poisonous ambitions, had tried to take everything from me, my livelihood, my peace, my family, but they had ultimately failed. I had not only kept my bakery, I had kept Daniel. And most importantly, I had kept myself. Did you like my story? And what city are you listening from? Let's connect in the comments. If you enjoyed it, please consider showing your support with a super thanks so I can continue bringing you stories like this one. Thank you for your kindness and encouragement. I eagerly await your feedback. And don't forget to check out the 2 new stories on the screen. There's so much more to explore on my channel. Subscribe for more life stories. With love and respect.